It's 9/11. I'm Charlie Sykes. Don't forget, Sunday Insight starts right now. Good morning and welcome to Sunday Insight. In the week that was, polls continue to tighten in the presidential race. The Green Bay Packers get ready to make a run for their 5th Super Bowl title. Green Bay's mayor faces criminal charges in a campaign finance probe. Now, they tell us, Mayor Tom Barrett says that tens of thousands of homeowners in Milwaukee should get filters because of lead in the water. Donald Trump praises Russian President Vladimir Putin, and Paul Ryan once again distances himself from the nominee's comments. Longtime local radio host Eric Vaughn passed away last week. But we start with this. Today marks the 15th anniversary of the terrorist attacks of September 11, 2001. No one who was alive that day will ever forget the images. The World Trade Towers in New York, the Pentagon, the heroic story of Flight 93. 3,000 Americans killed on a single day. A nation stunned, but seemingly resolved and united.
I can hear you, the rest of the world hears you, and the people who knocked these buildings down will hear all of us soon.
But today, that seems a long, long time ago, a world away. Our politics are more toxic than ever, the nation divided. And the question that lingers is this: despite all the remembrances and the memorials and the speeches, have we actually forgotten? Joining me on our panel this morning, the Milwaukee Community Journal's Michael Holt, political consultant Mary Jo Boss, political strategist Linda Bruin, and media trackers Brian Sept. I'll ask you, Brian, everybody says, never forget, we always remember, but it does seem that we have forgotten so many of the lessons of 9/11.
Well, I think in a way, Charlie, it's because that after 9/11, after those 3,000 Americans died, the brunt of the Americans who bore that consequence served in our military. They were the family members of those that served, and the thousands that didn't come home. And so there can be no disputing whether you agree or disagree with the wars in Iraq or Afghanistan. The nation is safer today than it was then.
Is it?
I believe it is safer. I mean, you look at it, we've been able to avoid the kind of mass terrorist attacks that we saw then, and I think that's due to the brave men and women who wear the uniform and who serve in law enforcement domestically, working to thwart terrorist attacks here at home from lone wolves.
Except the world is still dangerous. It becomes more dangerous all the time. The North Koreans are doing nuclear tests. We're seeing what's going on in the Middle East. And it does seem like, with all of our politics, that we're once again taking a kind of a holiday from history. I mean, what are we talking about? We're talking about whether Hillary Clinton coughs. We're talking about we're doing a lot of navel gazing as a country, and you kind of wonder, didn't we learn the lesson of
Well, the American public has a short memory when it comes to these big things, and there's no doubt that we here at home are safer now. Of course, with ISIS in the Middle East and other terrorist activities, the world is not safer, but we are safer today.
Okay, Michael, you of course were on my show that week when this happened, and it would have been very difficult to have predicted what would have happened in those 15 years. And there was that moment where it looked like maybe we were going to become united and pull in one direction. And I would argue that we're more divided than we were a decade and a half ago.
And I would fully agree with that. Two things stayed in my mind, and one was George Bush, the president, those remarks. And those remarks came after somebody shouted something to him.
We can't hear you.
Yeah. And he was so presidential. Yeah. I mean, but also because of what happened. I think that was that one shining moment when this country was united. There was no black, no color, no creed, no religion, unless you were Muslim. Everybody was together. And if that would have carried on, where would we be today? We've elected a black president, and we've regressed from that moment. That's what we should remember, that we are the United States. Individual under God, and we were one people, and now we're so divided again.
Yeah, we are. But let's go back to this question of whether or not we are safe, because during the 1990s, Al Qaeda made it very clear that they were at war with us, and we decided we were regarding it as a law enforcement issue. But so, are we safer again, or are we in fact back in that kind of denial that we were in the 1990s?
I don't think there was any denial. I think the millennials today look at 9/11 as we looked at World War II. They remember the heroes in a sort of nostalgic way, but they don't remember the deaths and what really the impact of it. But that's okay, because I think it allows us to look at it as its place in history, and say, what are the lessons that we want to balance our loss of liberty with what we need to do to keep safe. And we are taking steps. I would argue in some places, many places, we've gone too far. But we are safe.
Well, you know, President Bush argued this is going to be a war like no other war. It's going to be a generational struggle. And I think he was right in retrospect. It would take a generation. But the reality is that Americans kind of lost interest after about 5 years. We have a short attention span.
Yeah, and I think that we're much safer from the kind of widespread orchestrated attack of 9/11. Our ports and airports are safer. But our new threats are much more individualized, like the individual radical. So kind of our security concerns have kind of shifted as well. So I want to make sure, you know, I would hope that we haven't forgotten that there's still the potential for such a widespread orchestrated attack, and we don't loosen too much. The other folks that I think in some ways we've forgotten a bit, and I'm not saying whole scale, but you know, it took 12 years to get compensation before any person, any first responder or victim received compensation. It wasn't until 2012 that they added cancer to an approved disease for first responders. So I want to make sure that we keep the ongoing needs of those responders at the forefront as well.
I want to go back to something that Michael Holt said when you referred to that speech by George W. Bush. It's not fashionable, by the way, to say nice things about him, but it was one shining moment, and he did, you know, rise to that occasion as president. And you certainly wonder now, looking at our political leadership, whether there's anybody on the horizon who has the capacity to rise in that particular way, and I guess I'm skeptical. What is your glass half full? What is your glass half empty? Let's go around the table. We'll start with you, Michael Holt.
Well, my glass is half empty because in 1838, the Jesuit priest who founded Georgetown University, where Charlie's sons attended, sold 272 African slaves to pay off an operational debt. My glass is half full because last week the university apologized and will offer a few dollars in financial aid to the descendants of those slaves who qualify for admission. Actually, now that I think about it, that's pretty insulting.
Mary Jo Boss.
My glass is half empty because fewer students are being taught to write in cursive or longhand in any form. My glass is half full because as research has made clear the benefits of reflection, reframing, and engaging motor memory, more American school boards are putting cursive right handwriting back in the curriculum. More than half a dozen states have made it mandatory, and over 40 states are weighing similar measures.
Linda Bruin.
Well, my glass is half full that Mayor Barrett is urging residents to protect themselves from lead in their drinking water, but it's half empty because many children will still be at risk because their families can't afford the protective fixes.
Brian Sickma.
Well, my glass is half full because Assembly Republicans this week announced they intend to hold the line on Governor Scott Walker's UW tuition freeze for another year. My glass is half empty because Assembly Republicans also said they're open to allowing UW to raise tuitions on Wisconsin students in 2018.
Well, my glass is half full because Mayor Tom Barrett is now admitting that his city has a serious lead pipe problem. It's half empty because he should have realized that before he blew more than $100 million on a useless trolley and refused to sell water to Waukesha. Now, that sale would have generated enough revenue to actually fix the problem. Instead, he's telling people now to just let the water run, which will waste billions of gallons, and buy a filter. That's leadership? Our Sunday Insight Countdown shows that we are 15 days away from the first of 4 debates between Hillary Clinton and Donald Trump. The election is 58 days away, and either Hillary Clinton or Donald Trump will take the oath of office in 131 days. We'll be right back. Russ Feingold finds himself in an unusual position, under fire for his ethics and his honesty. Feingold, of course, has built his career as Mr. Clean, but last week, 2 stories seemed to dog him. First, even PolitiFact confirms that Feingold has completely broken his pledge to get most of his campaign money from Wisconsin, a promise that he had repeatedly made throughout his lengthy political career. This year, he is getting the vast majority of his cash from out-of-state donors. Then this, Politico reporting that the State Department is sitting on records about Feingold's tenure there, despite Freedom of Information Act requests. Reported Politico, Republicans looking for evidence of alleged political activity by Wisconsin Democrat Russ Feingold, while the State Department likely won't get their hands on Feingold's state documents until a month after the 2016 election, as a 20-month-old FOIA request has languished throughout the political season. Republicans want to know if Feingold was working on his return to the Senate campaign while he was at the State Department, which would be a violation of federal law. So give me your take on this. you know, Mr. Transparency, Mr. Clean apparently is, I don't know, covering up what he was doing in the State Department.
Well, there's two outrages here. One is that the State Department is complicit in the cover-up by not fulfilling the Freedom of Information. That's outrageous. But the other outrage is, you know, you can call Feingold a lefty, do-nothing, weasel, big-spending politician, but he's always hung his hat on his honesty.
Right.
And this just blows that away. It should have been done sooner, but now you see it.
Your take on this.
This is such a Republican smear tack to try because they're desperate over that race.
Open records.
Yeah,
I thought you guys were
first
in
of all,
favor
you
of
want
that.
an open records request. That's fine.
Yes,
the
20 months.
The State Department in 2015 had over 22,000 requests for freedom of information. So the idea,
too busy.
Yeah, no. If you Republicans want to fund more staff for the State Department so they can get all through those in a timely manner, that's just fine.
Except
but
with
there's
the Democrats.
no conspiracy here. Feingold can't even control that. He has no. He's not the one releasing that. That's the State Department. And if you're asserting that the State Department is in cahoots with Russ Feingold, I mean, talk about conspiracy theories.
Well, it's not a conspiracy.
It's just you know what, throw out dirt. The truth is a lot less sexy than the smear.
What is the truth? The question is, did he correspond with other Democrats about the campaign? They asked, can we have the emails? And now 20 months. What is actually taking so long? Now, what's interesting about this, and why I think it's interesting, is that there's something very Hillary Clinton-esque about all of this. Which is
it's not Hillary's State Department.
One of the things that I found so interesting was Mr. Clean, Russ Feingold, when he's asked about Hillary Clinton, says she's absolutely honest and trustworthy and ethical. Well, geez, why would he think that? Is it because he's adopting some of the same tactic? He's got his own slush fund on the side? But I mean, if you don't have anything to hide, why are they slow-walking this request?
Well, Russ Feingold is the biggest fraud in Wisconsin politics right now because, you know, he, on the one hand, he has this image of Mr. Clean, transparent. Now that, you know, the State Department's withholding his records, there are large gaps that we don't know about what he was doing in Africa whenever he says he was over there making world peace or something of that nature. Media Trackers has asked for some records about his term of service. Apparently other organizations have, according to the Politico report. Our request has been stonewalled. And the fact of the matter is, this guy who's this Mr. Clean campaign finance reform, in 1998, as he was working with John McCain to formulate McCain-Feingold, which would pass 4 years later, he got hit with a $9,000 fine for failing to report campaign contributions.
So if there's nothing there, if this is just a smear campaign, then Russ Feingold should issue a statement on Monday saying just release the documents, right? He's got the emails, don't you think?
That would be fine with me.
Yeah, I mean, isn't that the thing?
I think the Republicans don't want them actually released because you don't actually want to know that there's nothing
because they still won't get them until after the election.
Here's the interesting thing, that if you are hiding something, then you have something to hide.
He's not hiding something.
You may not want to hear it, or Lynn may not want to hear it, but we will tell you anyway. Let's hand out some unsolicited advice. Michael Holt.
Well, mine is about the chief of police. Several weeks ago, Milwaukee police handcuffed a white state representative who was guilty of talking to black residents in the Sherman Park area. They released him when they learned he was a politician. Hey, Chief, we're still waiting for you to explain this double standard.
Mary Jo Boss.
My unsolicited advice is for Hillary Clinton. Address questions about your health because they're not going away, and in an internet age, you'll not be able to bully them out of the media ecosystem. You need to be open and upfront, or they will rightfully dog you all the way to November.
Linda Bruin.
Well, my advice is to voters unhappy with Trump or Clinton. Libertarian Gary Johnson isn't the answer. Not knowing what Aleppo is was his disqualifying moment.
Brian Sickma.
Well, my unsolicited advice is for Donald Trump. Don't go out of your way to praise Russian President Vladimir Putin the very day a Russian warplane intercepts and endangers a U.S. patrol aircraft flying in international airspace.
Well, on the same line, look, not that he's going to take my advice, but Donald Trump should realize that Vladimir Putin is a KGB killer, a thug, and an enemy. He is not your buddy. Next on Sunday Insight, a proposed back-to-school sales tax holiday in Wisconsin. How much would it save, and how much would it cost the state? Well, who doesn't like a holiday? Governor Scott Walker and legislative Republicans are floating the idea of a sales tax holiday for back-to-school shopping next year. The holiday would mean no sales taxes on clothing under $75, computers under $2,000, school supplies under $75. The proposal would cost state coffers about $13 million a year and local governments about $950,000 a year. Now, to put that in perspective, the idea would amount to a cut of 0.25% of sales tax revenues. So is this a good idea or a gimmick, Michael Holt?
both.
Yeah.
And anytime the state wants to give us some of our money back or allow us to keep a little bit, and this is for a worthy cause. This is around school supplies. Now, if they can implement that, they approve that. It's going to be interesting to see how the Democrats vote on this. If they approve that, and the suggestion that they will pay for computers or laptops or iPads for all freshmen, I'll be singing a jig for the Republicans next year.
Okay.
Well, I've got a better idea. One that won't cost the state a dime, because we have what's called the minimum markup law here in the state of Wisconsin. And that actually is more than just a little bit of money. It actually keeps retailers from giving you too good of a deal at any time of the year, including back-to-school sales. Get rid of that. State loses no money. Taxpayers save. It's a win-win.
Yeah, thank you. I mean, obviously, this is a political gimmick. That doesn't mean it's a bad idea. But if you really want to save people money, how about repeal that ridiculous minimum markup law? But, of course, that's politically harder than having a sales tax holiday. And I don't know where Republicans came up with this idea, giving away the free laptop.
They're smart for change.
But because they decided that we're going to get on the gravy train of giving away free stuff, you know, so... Lena, you're right.
Look, I like this idea, but it's such, it actually disproportionately assists low-income families with kids in school.
Right.
But frankly, you're not going to have a big impact unless you exempt county and city sales taxes
well,
as well.
They would. I think that would be the point.
Okay, then I misunderstood that. But so that have a little bit more. But the bottom line is that $13 million, $14 million costs. I'd also like to see what programs they're going to cut to pay for it and see whether Wisconsinites would have wanted the other thing to stay.
Everything is good, like Milton Friedman. I'm in favor of cutting any taxes for any reason, any circumstances, any excuse, all the time. But I think Brian hit it on the head, and Governor Walker should get at the table with Representative Koyenga and hammer out some real tax cuts.
Well, yeah, but the real tax cuts. But again, the minimum markup is not a tax. It is this mandate that you cannot offer lower prices. It is completely irrational.
It's exactly
Obviously, you have a protectionist legislation that's been on the books since the Great Depression. You have people with a vested interest in it. That would make a lot more difference. You know, I mean, at some point, I get that this is tempting. This is the low-hanging fruit, but whatever. So what is it you don't get? Let's go around the table. Michael Holt, you're first.
Well, what I don't get is why white civic leaders and politicians have yet to denounce the new White Lives Matter group that's being run by neo-Nazis, KKK, and supporters of the new Confederacy.
Mary Jo Boss.
Charlie, what I don't get is what Sheriff Clark was thinking, trying to shut down Sherman Park. No violence had happened in the park, no riots had happened in the community for 2 weeks, and if ever there was a time that neighborhood needed that park as a community gathering place, it's now.
Linda Bruin.
Well, what I don't get is how any patriot could still back Donald Trump after he said our generals are rubble and Vladimir Putin is a better leader than the President of the United States.
Brian Sickma.
What I don't get is how Senator Russ Feingold can claim to be all about transparency when it comes to money and politics, but he managed to get fined $9,000 for failing to disclose over $50,000 in campaign cash.
Well, okay, we're on the same wavelength again. What I don't get is why Russ Feingold doesn't think transparency in government applies to him. Oh, wait, I do. Next on Sunday Inside, our panel picks the winners and losers of the week, but first, here's your morning news update. It's time for our panel to pick the winners and losers of the week. Michael Holt, you're first.
Well, just losers this week. Sad news for the entire Milwaukee community with the unexpected death of radio talk show host Eric Vaughn. Eric kept us informed and educated about the issues of the day. He was the voice of black radio for over a decade at WMCS before moving to WNOV last year. An excellent journalist and committed activist, he will be greatly missed.
Mary Jo Boss.
My winner this week is Apple, who cynically used their cult-like market power to make plug-in headphones obsolete and force a booming new market while creating a license to print money from Apple-owned Beats Bluetooth headphones and any other company wanting in. And as Michael said, Milwaukee loses this week with the death of Eric Vaughn. Eric was a radio pioneer in the minority community who turned WNOV into a 250-watt community beacon. He brought important issues, thoughtful conversation, and leadership to a corner of our community too often overlooked and unheard.
Linda Bruin.
My all-time heroes are 9/11's first responders. Unfortunately, more than 1,400 first responders have died from health complications since 9/11, and more than 2,500 now have cancer. Knowing many more will get cancer and become eligible for compensation for their illnesses or death, 9/11 advocates asked both presidential nominees if they'd support reauthorizing compensation when the legislation expires. Clinton emphatically said yes, she would. Trump didn't bother to respond. For ignoring these heroes and for many other obvious reasons, Trump is my all-time loser.
Brian Sikma.
My loser of the week is Milwaukee Mayor Tom Barrett, whose best advice to Milwaukee residents impacted by lead water pipes is run the water for 3 minutes before filling up your glass. That wastes 3 billion gallons of water each year. Well, my winner of the week is Governor Scott Walker, because even the radically left-wing Center on Wisconsin Strategy, a University of Wisconsin-sponsored think tank, admits, quote, the state has more jobs than ever before, and workers that want full-time work are having an easier time finding it.
Well, the winners are the heroes that we saw on 9/11 and the men and women who answered their country's call in the days, weeks, and years after we suddenly realized that our country had been attacked and that we were at war. Unfortunately, we are all losers in the sense that 15 years after 9/11, we are no safer than we were that day. Thanks for joining us, and join me for my radio show Monday morning. It's on News Radio 620 WTMJ from 8:30 until noon. Have a great week.